Welcome to Island Crimes and Mysteries. And now, it's time to join your host Nools for another episode.
Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Ireland Crimes and Mysteries. I want to thank you for joining me today, and if you're a returning listener, I want to say a big thank you for your continued support. If this is your first time listening to my podcast, welcome. It's great to have you on board. So without further ado, let's get started on today's story.
I've gone over every single scenario and I just don't know. None of us know what happened, Trevor. If you know, can you please come forward? Give my parents some peace.
Today's case takes us to Dublin, Ireland's capital city. With a population of approximately 1.2 million people, it is located at the mouth of the River Liffey, and with the Dublin Mountains to its south, it lies in the province of Leinster. It is the seat of the national government called the Oireachtas, which comprises of the President of Ireland, who resides at Áras an Uachtaráin in the Phoenix Park, Dáil Éireann, our House of Representatives, and the Seanad Éireann, which is also known as the Upper House, the latter two meeting in Leinster House, where the government has sat since the foundation of the Irish Free State in 1922. There is lots to see and do in Dublin, with many restaurants, including several Michelin star restaurants and lots of pubs to fit all tastes. Grafton Street and Henry Street provide everything you need for the ultimate shopping experience, as well as Dundrum Shopping Centre, which is only a few stops on the Lewis tram system. And if you're a sports fan, you can't visit Dublin without visiting Croke Park, headquarters to the GAA, the Gaelic Athletic Association, home to our national games, hurling and Gaelic football. As well as the stadium itself, there is a museum and tours of the stadium, including a rooftop tour, which give amazing views of the cityscape. Dublin also has the Guinness Storehouse, home to the world-famous stout itself, where you can take a self-guided tour and learn all about the history of the famous drink. Learn the 6-step ritual to pouring the perfect pint of Guinness before finishing in the amazing Gravity Bar with 360 views of the city, where you can enjoy a pint of the black stuff. Now, I've only touched on a very minuscule amount of things to do in the capital. I guess you have to visit yourself to find out more. But let me just say, if you're bored in Dublin, it isn't going to be the city's fault. Lots to do by day and even more fun to be had by night. And that's exactly what the person we are going to be talking about today was doing when he vanished without a trace on the 8th of December 2000, enjoying a night out with his work colleagues celebrating the upcoming Christmas festivities. Our story today centres around a bright, friendly, hard-working young man named Trevor Deely, who was described as great fun, always with a smile on his face, and loved being around people. Trevor's disappearance is particularly odd for the simple fact that he disappeared in the middle of a bustling city in the run-up to Christmas and has never been seen again. Trevor was born on the 15th of August 1978 to his parents, Michael and Anne. He was the youngest in the family, having 3 other siblings, 2 sisters, Michelle and Pamela, and a brother Mark. The family lived in Naas, County Kildare, where he attended school. On finishing school, Trevor attended the Waterford Institute of Technology, where he studied business, while supporting himself with a part-time job in a supermarket. He thought it was the course that he wanted, as he had a great interest in maths, but he wasn't very happy with the course he had chosen and decided in his second year that he would drop out and reassess his future. His friends would say he was an easygoing guy, nothing fazed him, and he always had a positive outlook. So it was no surprise that after reflecting on things, Trevor, with ease, decided the path he wanted to take was in computers, and completed a course in computers in Dublin after that, which he loved. Then in May 1999, at the age of 22, he got a job working in the IT department in the Bank of Ireland Asset Management building near the Leeson Street Bridge in the middle of the city. The staff there loved Trevor, almost immediately stating he was so enthusiastic about the job. Management there knew that they had taken on the right person. He worked alongside a group of approximately 10 other people in an open plan office and became good friends with his fellow colleagues, all saying that he was a personable and hard-working person. No one had anything bad to say about Trevor. And all the customers he dealt with loved dealing with him. As well as working hard, Trevor also loved to enjoy himself, and on Thursday night, that became the allotted night out after finishing work at 4. Trevor had also moved into a nice apartment in St James's Court on Serpentine Avenue in Sandymount on Dublin's south side. So all in all, life was very good for Trevor in the run-up to his disappearance. Prior to that fateful night in December, Trevor had taken some holidays from work in the November to go to Alaska after making friends with some girls in Dublin who were out in Anchorage, Alaska, and he decided to go and visit them. There are conflicting thoughts as to whether he had been invited or took it upon himself to go over there. The family think he may have had a crush on one of the girls, but no one can say for certain. When he returned, he went home to Naas to the family home. He told his dad on his return that he really enjoyed the holiday, calling it a trip of a lifetime. His father planned to chat more extensively to him about the trip over the Christmas period, and it is now his eternal regret that he didn't find out more about it on that day, but no one was to know what was coming down the tracks.
I just said to him, look, Trevor, we'll have more time to talk about this at Christmas. I'm really anxious to hear all about it because it sounded very interesting. Oh, he said, listen, it was a marvellous trip. It was the trip of a lifetime. And it was one of my big regrets that we didn't have that talk at Christmas.
So what did happen in the early hours of the 8th of December to Trevor? What were the events leading up to his disappearance? And what has happened since with the investigation? Let's take a look. Trevor's day on that Thursday started out as normal. He arrived at the bank for work on time. Everyone was in high spirits, including Trevor, and looking forward to that night, as it was the office Christmas party night. There was a real buzz around the office as everyone chatted about the plans they had made. Trevor's brother Mark sent him a text message at some stage during the day wishing him a good night. So after the working day ended, the group turned off their computers and hit the road. The weather that night was miserable with persistent heavy rain and wind, and to add to all the Christmas revellers' misery, there was a taxi strike, making public transport extremely busy. So making your way around the city that night was not an easy task. But that didn't dampen Trevor or his work colleagues' spirits. They were determined to have a great night. First destination was Copperface Jack's, a very popular bar and nightclub situated on Harcourt Street in the heart of Dublin. Then the gang made their way, after a few drinks and coppers, to the Hilton Hotel for their office dinner. The hotel is near the Portobello Bridge, a short distance from Harcourt Street, where they spent a number of hours. Everyone said that Trevor was really enjoying the night and was in great form. At some point, Trevor left the hotel and went to a nearby ATM and was caught on CCTV withdrawing what was later found to be £60. This ATM was located near the Grand Canal. Other members of the group have said that despite the party atmosphere and high spirits everyone was in, no one was drinking to excess, and even though Trevor had had a few drinks, he was in no way inebriated. It was a Thursday night after all, and Trevor was well aware he was working the following morning. But this did not stop him enjoying the night. So after they had spent a few hours in the Hilton and Trevor had got the money from the ATM, the decision was made to head on to the next club and keep the party going. The gang headed to Leeson Street near Stephen's Green, a mecca for party revellers. Leeson Street is a tale of two halves. By day, this street of old Georgian houses is a quiet street, and each house is populated with solicitors and accountancy offices. But by night, the street transforms into a party street, dotted with hip nightclubs in the basements of these Georgian houses, that the young office workers and college students pack into, bringing the street to life. By morning, any trace of the night before is long gone as the street returns to quiet and the offices open for business. Trevor and his friends headed to Buck Whaley's, where they stayed until the early hours of the morning. The night was still miserable and the rain continued to lash down, and Trevor made the decision to leave Buck Whaley's at about 3:25 a.m. and headed south on Leeson Street, walking over Portobello Bridge in the direction of the canal, heading towards his work offices, a journey of about 5 minutes by foot, arriving at the office gate at 3:30, still quite sober as observed by those who were with him at the club and those who met him. When he arrived at the Bank of Ireland Asset Management building, he was spotted on CCTV at the gates of the building, having a brief interaction with someone dressed in black standing at the gate. This man had arrived at the gates at around 3 a.m, approximately half an hour before Trevor arrived, and appeared to be just hanging around. Trevor then enters the building. This man continues to stand outside the gate, and a couple of minutes after Trevor arrived, 2 other individuals arrived at the gate. They hang around for a couple of minutes and then seem to move on. They were later ruled out as being fellow work colleagues of Trevor's. But why they were outside the gate at that hour has never been released to the public. His colleague Carl was working the late shift in the building. He said when Trevor arrived in, he was drenched, but in great form. Trevor asked him did he want to have a cup of tea with him, and then Trevor went to his desk space and logged in and checked a few emails, getting himself ahead for the following day's work and seeing what way his day would possibly unfold. Trevor and Carl then headed to the canteen for a cuppa and chatted about the night, Trevor telling Carl all about what had happened and how the party had went. He told Carl it had been a great night and everyone was in top form. To all intents purposes, from Carl's description of Trevor, he seemed, despite, as Carl put it, Trevor being a little bit tipsy, he was well capable, in no way inebriated and in full control of all his faculties despite having had a few drinks. After their chat and at around 4 a.m, Trevor said to Carl he was going to go home and get a bit of rest before work. He grabbed his umbrella and headed out the building, telling Carl he would see him on Monday and into the miserable night. He would have to walk home because of the taxi strike. Carl went back to work oblivious to the fact that he had just said goodbye to his friend for the final time. That was the last time Trevor would be seen by anyone that knew him, but not the last time he would have been seen. CCTV, albeit very grainy, would pick him up at various points on his journey home on foot. He left a voicemail on a friend's mobile recorded at 4:05, saying they would meet for drinks over the weekend, hopefully. The first footage is of Trevor leaving the Bank of Ireland Asset Management building at around 4 a.m. He is seen on the footage talking to another person, which appears to be the same guy that was standing there when Trevor entered the building. This person appeared to be dressed in black. Who this person is has never been established. Did he follow Trevor after he left? The next and last bit of CCTV footage of Trevor was at 4:14 a.m, where he was last seen walking past what was then the AIB Bank on the corner of Bagot Street Bridge and Haddington Road, heading in the direction of his home, with a large golf umbrella protecting him from the rain. Then approximately 30 seconds later, a man dressed in black and looking eerily like the man that was outside the gates of the Bank of Ireland passes by on that same CCTV behind Trevor. Gardaí, as of December 2023, have however ruled out the theory it was the same man, as they have since spoken to the individual in the footage walking past the AIB and ruled him out as being the same person as the man outside the gates of the Bank of Ireland. As I said, this is the last bit of footage of Trevor captured, and it's from here the trail runs cold. What happened to Trevor or where he went after this footage is a complete mystery to this very day. Not one trace of Trevor has been found since. If he'd been attacked or even had an accident, where is his body? If it was an accident and he fell into the canal, you would assume his body would have been recovered. And if something more sinister had happened, no one witnessed a thing. It was an extremely busy night. The streets were bustling with people, all making their way home, many on foot because of the strike. How could no one see a thing? Surely any bit of an altercation would have been seen by someone. It would make you wonder, had he gone somewhere with someone he knew? As you would be assuming, he went voluntarily if nothing had been witnessed on the busy streets. Unfortunately for Trevor, when he didn't turn up for work the following day, despite finding it unusual, no one was too concerned, which is understandable. After all, it had been a late night the night before, and people just thought he was sleeping it off or that his alarm had failed to go off. The office did try ringing him, but their calls went unanswered. To add to the reason his disappearance went unnoticed was the fact that his flatmates were also away that weekend too, so there was no one there to notice that he did not come home. It wasn't until the Monday morning, when he again failed to show for work, that alarm bells started ringing in the Bank of Ireland office where Trevor worked. Management asked around his office, wondering had anyone been in touch with him over the weekend, and some said they had tried reaching out to him, but their calls had too gone unanswered. On reflection, his sister remembered ringing his phone a few times over the weekend and said it rang out. This is significant as, according to Dr. Philip Perry, a senior research fellow in radio and optical communications lab at Dublin City University, a phone from that period, the early 2000s, would have gone dead within seconds of entering a body of water. If his sister was ringing his phone and it had rang out, it was almost a certainty that the phone was not in water. Meanwhile, after some time trying to locate Trevor, office management made the decision to ring his family in Naas to let them know that Trevor could not be found and had not turned up for work, and that no one was able to make contact with him all weekend. They made several panicked phone calls to his friends to see if anyone had heard from Trevor. They had not. His mother Anne then told his father to go check the apartment. His father went to the apartment, but unfortunately did not have a key to get in, and after knocking on the door repeatedly to silence, the decision was made to call to the Garda station in Harcourt Street that Monday, December the 11th. His brother Mark, who was working in Castlebar, got the call and immediately left work and started the journey to Dublin to be with his family. From the get-go, the Gardaí were concerned, as was everyone who knew Trevor. Everyone knew Trevor would always be in contact with family and friends. Despite being 3 days behind, the Gardaí sprang into action, getting detectives on the job to try and retrace Trevor's last movements and locate him. On Tuesday, December the 12th, the Garda Sub-Aqua team started searching the River Dodder, one of 3 rivers that runs through Dublin, and the Grand Canal between Bagot Street Bridge and Leeson Street Bridge, but no trace of Trevor was found. This included his coat, his wallet, his phone, which have never been recovered. The Aqua team then searched outside of the loch in case he had fallen in there, but again, nothing. And the chances of him being washed away were practically zero, as there was no current there. The dive team searched the whole way to Alexandra Basin, which leads to Dublin Bay, and then out into the Irish Sea. This area was extensively searched, and according to the senior dive specialist in charge of the search for Trevor, if he was there, they would have definitely found him. And they were sure they would find him, but he was not there, making it highly unlikely that Trevor disappeared because he had an accident and fell into the water. Despite the quick reaction once Trevor's disappearance became apparent, you can't help but wonder, had precious time and evidence been lost through no fault of anyone in those initial hours and days over that early December weekend? As part of the investigation, 2 members of An Garda Síochána travelled to Alaska to interview the girls he had stayed with, in case his disappearance was in any way linked to this trip. Later, his sisters would make the same trip to visit these girls, but unfortunately it appears there is no evidence to suggest the trip is tied to his disappearance. His family were shocked and panicked by his sudden disappearance, which to everyone who knew Trevor was completely out of character. His brother Mark saying they knew in their gut something was seriously wrong, stating that every minute felt like weeks. He remained in Dublin for 2 months trying to find his brother. His father Michael did not return to work for 6 months after the disappearance.
It's very difficult. I mean, the whole mystery surrounding his disappearance, and you're wondering about this and wondering about that. And you just can never get away from it, no matter whether I drive down the country or walk out the town of Naas. It's the same thing. There's always something to remind you of Trevor. I would ask anybody with information about Trevor, about his whereabouts, to please let us know. So the appeal is to just find my son. I want him back.
So if it wasn't an accident, was it something more sinister that caused Trevor to vanish? Was it a random act by an opportunist that saw him walking alone on that wet night in the early hours? Or was it someone who held a grudge against Trevor? Was it someone he knew? The likelihood that someone with a grudge followed Trevor around that night, waiting for the opportunity to strike, seems a bit far-fetched. It would appear more likely random. But the simple fact is the Gardaí investigating don't know, as they literally have nothing to go on. In conjunction with the investigation, Trevor's family and friends began to publicly campaign to bring awareness to the general public and get Trevor's name out and make people aware of his disappearance. They put up posters and spoke to people on the streets around the area where Trevor was last seen. From the beginning, his family were extremely involved and proactive in every aspect of finding Trevor and aiding the investigation. His brother Mark was one day walking a few of the possible routes Trevor could have taken on his journey home when he got talking to a Garda outside the American embassy, who said to him that President Clinton was visiting Dublin later that week, and because of this, the whole area had been swept by the President's advanced security detail. This included checking manholes, emptying skips, and every inch of the surrounding area being thoroughly searched. If Trevor was anywhere in that area, they would have found him, as that sweep was extremely thorough and detailed. But unfortunately, if anything belonging to Trevor had been discarded, the bins had been emptied. It was also highlighted on Crimeline, RTE's flagship crime appeal programme, where an appeal was made to the public to come forward with any information in relation to his disappearance. If anyone had witnessed anything in the early hours of the 8th of December, Gardaí asked that people make contact with them. Despite the theory he had fallen into the water being thoroughly explored, another theory was looked into was the possibility that Trevor could have been involved in some sort of accident, like, for example, if someone had knocked him down. Had they jumped out and bundled an unconscious or deceased Trevor into their car and made their escape unnoticed? Again, this scenario feels slightly unrealistic, as you would think someone would have seen something, or if someone had knocked him down, they would have surely had a badly damaged car, and this would have had to be repaired, or even sold, to get rid of the evidence. Along the way, with all the publicity, if this had been the case, someone would have surely come forward saying they had fixed a damaged car or bought a car that had been recently fixed. To me, this theory seems an unlikely scenario. The fact that it was 3 days before a full-scale search was initiated for Trevor does have significant consequences, unfortunately. Lots of precious evidence was probably lost. Some CCTV, for example, might have been on a 24-hour tape and taped over. People's memories might not have been as clear after 3 days. Any potential crime scene may have been severely compromised between various activities of daily living and inclement weather. In 2016, Gardaí reopened the investigation and a €100,000 reward for any information leading to Trevor's whereabouts was announced. The grainy CCTV footage was sent to the UK to be digitally enhanced by experts. The newly enhanced footage was released to the public in 2017. Gardaí at the time announcing the man at the bank gates was, in their opinion, the same man later seen following Trevor. We now know this not to be the case, as I said earlier. This man seen following Trevor has come forward and been ruled out of the investigation. Then in August of 2017, an informant came forward saying Trevor had been murdered by a well-known criminal who operated in the Crumlin area. He had stated that this criminal, who he maintained was the man following Trevor, was part of a drugs and prostitution gang and had accosted Trevor as he wanted to get into the asset management bank building that morning, and he said somewhere along the way things went bad and Trevor ended up being murdered by this man. Before saying Trevor was buried somewhere in the Chapel Lizard area of Dublin, some 8 kilometres from where he went missing. Gardaí extensively searched the area around Chapel Lizard that the informant had stated Trevor was buried over a 6-week period, but Trevor was not located. With what we know now about the man in the CCTV, it appears this informant was sending the Gardaí on a wild goose chase. In 2019, the Irish Prison Service, in association with Crime Stoppers and the Gardaí, started displaying posters of Trevor in various prisons, hoping someone with information would come forward. To date, this has yielded no results. Having practically ruled out Trevor accidentally falling into the canal or the River Dodder, what are we left with? The family and all who knew him are completely confident that Trevor would not take his own life. He was a very happy man. He was very happy with life at the time of his disappearance. He was not depressed, was planning things for his future, and on the night in question was very upbeat and enjoying himself. Plus, one of his final calls was to his friend to organise meeting for drinks that weekend, as well as the fact he had done some prep work at the office for the following day's work. Not the actions of someone about to take their own life, one would assume. We can also rule out his Alaska trip having had anything to do with his disappearance. It also appears to be a red herring. Theories that he had been involved in a love triangle have been discounted and dismissed by his family. They don't believe this trip had anything to do with his disappearance, and neither do the authorities. Through the years, various theories have been bandied about, and that's all they are, theories. And his family do not want these to interfere with the investigation or hamper any efforts to find Trevor. It is important to them that media and online publications, as well as social media, deal in facts. Unfortunately, all these years later, they are no nearer to finding out the truth about what happened to Trevor, despite every avenue and piece of information being investigated thoroughly. As recently as 2023, the final footage was enhanced even more in line with modern techniques, and all that has done is outrule the man following behind Trevor. Progress, I know, but it only deepens the mystery now, as for years everyone thought this man was the key to unlocking the truth. So basically the investigation is back to square one.
As a family, we have never believed that people can disappear into thin air. We know someone knows something, and we ask that you come forward to put an end to this relentless nightmare. Many people over the past 16 years have questioned why we continue to search for Trevor. The answer is simple if you knew Trevor. We can sum it up by saying if the situation was reversed, he would never give up on us.
Like I always say, someone knows what happened to Trevor. Someone holds all the answers, like in all the other missing persons cases I've covered. Despite the passage of time and all the kicks, his family remain as committed today as they did the first day they found out he was missing. His parents are now in their 80s, and all they want is to know what happened to Trevor, where he is, find him and bring him home. Every year on the anniversary of his vanishing, the family hand out posters in the area hoping to jog someone's memory. When he disappeared, Trevor was wearing a yellow and brown shirt and beige cord trousers. He is described as being 6 foot and of slim build, with short red blonde hair and green eyes. There is a Garda age progression picture of Trevor on the garda.ie official webpage, as well as footage from the CCTV that night if anyone wants to take a look. And if you do have any information, no matter how insignificant you think it may be, if you were in the canal area that night of the 7th going into the 8th of December 2000, or the area of Wilton Terrace, Dublin 2, or Haddington Road area, please call the Gardaí at Pierce Street Garda Station on 01 666 9000, or even your own local Garda station. So guys, that's it for today's episode of the Ireland Crimes and Mysteries podcast. Again, thanks for your listenership, And don't forget to subscribe to the show and hit that auto download so you never miss an episode. Until the next time, keep your eyes open and your mind curious. This podcast has been compiled from information gathered in the public sphere, like news articles, documentaries, and open source material that can be found on the web. Everything in this podcast is alleged unless a conviction has taken place.
You've been listening to Ireland Crimes and Mysteries. Join Newells for another episode, coming real soon. And keep up to date by following our social media sites, our YouTube channel, and our website, irelandcrimesandmysteries.ie.